So if anyone is not able to stay for the whole thing, or if you have friends that want to get this afterwards, I just hit record, so hopefully I will have it available. Welcome to our webinar on the REAP program. It's the Rural Energy for America program, and it's a federal grant program that helps with energy efficiency and renewable energy projects for farms and rural small businesses. And we do have Ann Correa from the USDA with us today, so if there's any questions that are beyond me, she should be able to help. This farm that is being shown here is Ferrandino Farm in Hampton. They got a REAP grant and they got an MDAR grant and were able to upgrade their maple sugaring equipment. And we actually did a video case study there, so in just a couple of weeks that should be available. There we go. So the Mass Farm Energy Program, which is me and a couple of my coworkers, provide grant assistance. We specifically probably know the most about the REAP grant and the MDAR grant. MDAR is the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources. And the REAP grant is from USDA Rural Development, which again is Ann. And the other thing that the MSEP program does is provide audit assistance. So we can help you fund an audit if you need an energy study for whatever project you're doing. We'll get to when those are required in a little bit, but they are required for all MDAR grants. So if that's something you're ever interested in, give us a call. So the REAP grant covers 25% of eligible project costs, and that is for any kind of project, renewable energy or energy efficiency. You can see here there's a minimum grant request and a maximum grant request for each type of project. I have yet to encounter a farm that has been outside of those numbers that pretty much covers everybody, but it is something we'll consider when you come to us with a project. And the maximum you can get is 25%. And then you can also submit one energy efficiency and one renewable energy in the same fiscal year. That's what this is saying. But it's a very competitive program, so we tend to encourage people to just send one application. Technologies that are eligible for REAP, it covers not everything, but most things that farms and small businesses are interested in. Energy efficiency means anything that you're going to be improving your energy use. So you're using some energy now, and you're going to be using less energy with an upgraded lighting system or refrigeration. Those are probably the most common projects that I see. For renewable energy, it's anything that's generating energy. Solar is definitely the most popular. Most of the people that I work with want to do solar at some point. And there's a note at the bottom here. The technology, whatever you are looking to do, has to be commercially available, which is usually not a problem, but REAP doesn't really go for experimental technologies or something that hasn't been tested.
Yes, right outside that opening on the right. Just go back out on the right side. Yes, and then go one door past, go back out.
So there are certain costs for this grant that are eligible and ineligible. Fine, we have a little, people get confused here at the store. So you can purchase equipment, which is usually something like the reverse osmosis machine that the maple producers had, or a more efficient evaporator, or things like that. Retrofitting a building or retrofitting your existing equipment, that goes into energy efficiency. And you can see this whole list of things, and I can send this to people if there's something that you have a question about. There are certain things that are ineligible. The ones that come up the most frequently are new construction. REAP doesn't cover if you're building like a whole new building, because nothing is going to be more efficient than having nothing there. You can't buy farm equipment, or that's an eligible cost, is farm equipment, and like all the other things that are listed. You can have a project that includes some of those costs. It's not like if you're doing a project that includes some of that, you are just ineligible. It's just that the cost for that is not covered by the grant. You can't include it on the application. So who's eligible for REAP? I believe most of the people that have registered are farms. So you will probably qualify as an agricultural producer, which means that 51% or more of your income comes from agricultural production. It means you have to make, grow, produce something. If you don't qualify as an ag producer, that doesn't necessarily mean you won't also qualify as a rural small business. If I have any small businesses there, we'll go over what makes you small, what makes you rural in just a second. But it basically covers most businesses that have contacted me, because Massachusetts doesn't have like too many enormous things. But anyway, I'll move over this in just a second. There's absolutely no difference when you apply as an ag producer or a rural small business. It doesn't matter. You don't get different money or more money. It's the same. It's just how you get into the program. Businesses can be a variety of things. You can be a co-op, a sole proprietor, a corporation, an LLC. There's a lot of different options for what qualifies as a business. Most of the farms I work with tend to be sole proprietors or doing business as a DBA. So what is a small business? There is something called the FDA Size Standard, which comes with the NAICS code, which is the North American something code. It's a code that, oh, I have it here, sorry. It's the North American, this is covering it, Industry Classification System, or Business Industry Code, which basically just says what kind of business are you. So we took a screenshot from that here, and you can see Sector 11 is agriculture, forestry, fishing, and it has a code, which is that number over on the left, this number here. And that corresponds to a size standard in millions of dollars. So this is $75 million. If your annual receipts are under that, you qualify as a small business. Most people that I work with don't have a problem qualifying as small. They're huge in order to be a large business. And this code, the NAICS code, is on your taxes. It's especially on your Schedule F if you're a farm. And so your size is determined by taking your average income for the past 3 years and then seeing if it's lower than this number, which is not always $75 million, but it is for a lot of things. And this is something we'll help you figure out. If we can go over your taxes with you, we'll find the code, we'll see what you are. You can also look it up, as you can see, by the industries. If you can't find it on your taxes or don't know what it is, you can be like, oh, well, I grow this. I'm a maple producer. I grow apples. Like, you could find it.
I think it's 750,000.
Oh, yeah?
0.75.
It's 750,000. Yeah. That's probably true. I'm sorry. Because
if it's 75 million, that's one heck of a small business.
Yeah. Sorry. So Rob is pointing out that it's probably 750,000, not 75 million. I'm sorry. He's correct. But still, I usually don't have a farm that is bigger than that.
Exactly.
So to determine what is rural, the USDA has a property eligibility locator tool, which sounds like a lot of words, but it's basically just a map. And you put your address in. I have links to this. If you need help with this, you can just give me a call, or I'll send you the link, or you can probably find it, but it's kind of, it'll be easier to just get the link from someone. But it's really simple to use. You just click on it, you put in your address. We have the address here for the building that we're in right now in Springfield, and it will pop up this map with a little pin where it is and a box. Hopefully it will say this address is located in an eligible area. The store is not, because Springfield is not a rural area. If you're an ag producer, so if you're a farm, you don't have to meet the rural eligibility requirement. You can be anywhere. You could be an urban farm as long as 51% or more of your income comes from farming. So a rural area is one that's 50,000 in population or less and not contiguous to or adjacent to an urbanized area. But this will just give you the answer. So the application. This is what a lot of people want to know, is how to fill out the application. That's something that I help a lot of farms with. The Mass Farm Energy Program received grant funding to help farms fill out their applications. So if you're having trouble with it or if you can't find it, if you have questions, you can contact me. I'll put my contact info up in a little bit in case any of you don't have it, but I think everyone does. And I can go over it with you. I can help you fill it in. I can just answer questions if you're already filling it in yourself. So there are several components to the application. There's the application itself, which is a single document. It's typically in PDF form. And then there's all the things that you need to submit along with the application. So you'll need to send in your tax returns or payroll forms, but most people do tax returns for the last 3 years. This helps verify your eligibility as a small business or as a farm because it will show either that your income's coming from farming or that you're under the size standard. If you do an energy efficiency project, if you guys see EE in this presentation, that just means energy efficiency. You will require an energy audit or an energy assessment. In just 1 second, we'll go over why, or not why, but what qualifies as an audit or an assessment. The reason why is because you need to prove the savings. So if you're taking out like your 50-year-old refrigerator and replacing it with a new one, clearly it's going to save some energy because they're much more energy efficient now, but it needs to be quantified. So you need to have someone do a study of your project or sometimes of your whole farm showing what the energy savings will be. Commitment of funds documentation, this is very important. It's worth a lot of points, and we'll go over the point structure in a minute. That basically says that you're going to be able to pay for the rest of the project. So REAP covers 25% of the cost, and they want to know how you're going to come up with the remaining 75%. So it can be another grant that you've applied for, like the NDAR grant. It could be a loan that you have, a line of credit, a bank statement, anything that shows you have the rest of the money. If your project is greater than $200,000, which means it's very, very large, and if it is a renewable energy project, because that's what RE means here, you do require a feasibility study. This doesn't come up very often, but a feasibility study is much more involved in an audit. It takes longer. It's like a big deal. So if you're going for a really big project, you're going to be over $200,000. You need to start as soon as possible and get the feasibility study done so that you can apply. And then you need financial statements, which again is only if it's over $200,000. I think that's also to back up where you're going to get the rest of the money because it's probably a lot of money. The SF-424 forms are a bunch of supplemental documents that need to be filled out along with the application. Anne Correa from USDA has really nicely bound all of these documents together into a single PDF that's available online, and I have a copy of it. And that really helps that you don't have to go chasing down all the different forms. They're all in one PDF, and that's called the binder. So when you fill out the application, you'll also fill out the binder. Again, a thing that I will help with. A lot of the information is the same. It just has to be submitted, and then you'll submit those together. And one of the forms is the 1940, and there's environmental info that needs to be filled out. We'll go over this in a little bit more detail. If people are interested, I do have the applications. We could just look at them quickly, not go through them like meticulously, but it's basically saying that you're not going to violate any of the federal laws about the environment because this is a federal program. It has to, your project has to be in compliance with all federal laws about wetlands and endangered species and everything like that. Again, this is not typically a problem on your farm. It's probably already disturbed land. A lot of people are doing equipment in an existing building or roof-mounted solar. It doesn't often present a problem. And then the biggest thing that people don't know about and that needs to be done ahead of time are the federal ID numbers, which I think, I had a slide about. I think I might have one later. So we'll get to this in more detail later, but there's a DUNS number and a SAM cage code. The DUNS number is a DUNS and Bradstreet Universal Numbering System, I think is what it stands for. Basically a number that your business has that says you're a business. It's a way that you register. And then the SAM is something that the federal government uses to help disperse payment and to make sure that you're in compliance with the federal laws. And we'll get into this in more detail in just a minute. So I talked about needing an assessment or an audit, and do you need one to apply for REAP? As I said, if you're doing energy efficiency, then yes, you do. You have to prove that your new project is more efficient, that you're saving energy. Again, if you're over $200,000, you need a little bit more. Under 200K, you need at least an assessment. There's a slide next that talks about the difference between assessment and an audit. And then if you're over, you will definitely need an audit. If you have questions about what you need, or you're not sure, or you don't know who qualifies as an assessor or an auditor, please call me. We'll figure it out. I know this is a lot of information to keep track of, and that's why our program is here. We will guide you through the process, tell you what the next step is. For renewable energy projects, you don't need an audit unless it's over $200,000. So if it's a small project, as long as it's under $200,000 in cost, you don't need an audit because it's renewable, so it's not proving energy savings. You're just putting something up. You will need a solar proposal, which I don't know how you would not have one to the other solar contractor who's doing the project for you. That will say what the size is going to be and how much energy it's going to generate. That's just for solar. There's other renewable projects, but solar is the most popular. So there's different qualifications for the types of auditors or assessors that are able to do this. There's a lot of detail about who qualifies as what, but basically, if it's an engineering firm or someone who does audits for a living or has done a bunch of audits, they're probably going to be okay. We can check for you if you've got someone in mind that you're like, I don't know if this person counts as an auditor. There's a lot of really long explanations of which is which that we can help you wade through. We also have an engineering partner that the Max Farm Energy Program works with that we can refer you to if you don't have someone in mind and you just need to get it done. And again, Max Farm Energy covers 75% of the cost of an audit. You just apply to us. It's like a one-page application. There's no deadlines. It's not complicated. It's like always on a rolling basis. And they come right to me, so you just work with me on it. And we'll cover 75% of the cost. So you can see that basically the more money you're spending on your project, the more qualified the person doing the audit needs to be. Is basically that.
Post-construction audit.
No, everything has to be done before the project even begins.
So what's the audit?
So the audit is, depending on your project, basically going to be an energy assessment of your farm. So do you have a project in mind, like something you're looking to do? Is it energy efficiency or renewable?
It's solar. Solar.
Okay, so for solar, you don't actually need an audit because you're not trying to establish a baseline of energy use to apply for REAP. For NDAR, which I think is maybe up there, NDAR, which again is the Master Partner of Agricultural Resources, requires an audit for all projects that are applying no matter what. That's because in addition to the energy efficiency requirement where they want to see a baseline and then what you're improving, if you're doing a renewable system, they want to make sure that you've already optimized your efficiency in all your other systems. So NDAR requires an audit, but REAP does not for renewable systems as long as they're under $200,000, which I realize is like a lot of if-then statements. So I think I went over this. We covered 75%. The farm has 25%. The audit assistance is great because you're only ever responsible for the 25%. You don't have to pay the whole cost and then get reimbursed. You only pay the 25%. The audits that our engineering partner does will meet the REAP and the MDAR guidelines. There's something called an AG-EMP, which is an Agricultural Energy Management Plan. That is more comprehensive. It's more detailed. That's required by NRCS for any of their grants, which is the Natural Resources Conservation Service, I think. There's so many acronyms, and I've forgotten what all of them mean. That one's more involved, but it's still something we can help you get, and it's still something we'll fund 75% of regardless. So this is just a brief explanation of the difference between assessment and an audit. So an assessment typically is targeted to assess only one project. So if you're just looking to see how much energy your refrigeration project is going to save, that's what you go with. The audit covers everything, the whole farm, all your energy use. They'll look at your bills. And my coworker Liz, who made this slide, has just thrown up some ideas for cost. The cost of the audit is very, very variable. It depends on how big your farm is, how much work is required to go into the project. That is a terrible sentence. It depends on how big your farm is and what the project is and like how much work the engineer is going to put into the audit, how big and how comprehensive it's going to be. Before you agree to an audit, you get a proposal that will show you what it's going to cost, how much MFEP will cover, how much you'll cover before you agree to anything. So there's no harm in like seeing what it would be. You don't have to commit to anything. I have some people who are like, no, I don't want to do this, and that's fine. We're not going to like force you into it. So here's the DUNS number. This is something I talked about before. Dun & Bradstreet Data Universal Numbering System. I'm not going to read the slide to you. You can see it. It's a copyrighted means of identifying businesses. It's just a number that says this is this business. To get it, you apply on the Dun & Bradstreet website. It's a little bit confusing how to start the process. Once you get into it, it's pretty straightforward. They just want to know the name of your business, your contact information, and it should match whatever's on your taxes for the particular business that you're doing, not your personal taxes. This is something else MFEP can help walk people through. We did a workshop on this, I think last week or the week before, and I have that PowerPoint if it's something you want to look at, or if you just want to call me, I'm happy to walk people through this. It's not super complicated, but it does need to be done ahead of time because it can take 6 weeks to get the number back from the government. It doesn't usually take that long, but it can if there's a problem, if there's a mismatch between the information you enter and the information on your taxes, or if they can't find it in the system, it can take a while. Oh, I'm not sure. We'll come back to that afterwards because I'll ask Ann why it's required, but it's definitely a requirement of the grant. I don't want to say the wrong thing. So a lot of farms and businesses I find already have a DUNS number, they just don't know it. So the first thing you do is go into the system and look it up and put in your business and the city, and it'll tell you if you already have one. I think my guess as to why it's required is to prove that you're a business and not just like a person, because it's something that's given to your business. It's 100% free to get. It doesn't cost any money. It doesn't take a whole lot of time. It's just a thing that you need to have. Yeah, so it's a means of identifying business entities, and it's a unique number. It's almost like a social security number for your business, like so they know who you are. Yeah. So then there's also SAM, the System for Award Management, which is an identifier for a business so you can receive grants from the federal government. You need to have a DUNS number to apply for the SAM. This says it takes 2 to 6 weeks. Again, if there's not a problem or a mismatch, it usually takes much less time than that. But we like to get people to start as soon as possible so that they can make sure they have these before they apply for the grant. MFEP will help get you through both of these processes. It's mostly just your information. So for SAM, you need your social security number or your EIN, employer identification number, or your tax identification number, and your direct deposit information so that they can pay you the grant. And there's like a list of requirements that will help make sure you have lined up and walk you through the process. So those are things you need to apply. We talked a little bit before about making sure the technology that you're going for is commercially available. If it's commercially available, it meets these 6 requirements. Basically, just making sure it's something that already exists, that's not experimental technology, or that is going to possibly fail or not function the way it's intended. Almost anything you can buy commercially will qualify. New refrigerators, all the solar arrays that are put up by like a solar company are fine. If you go for something experimental, you can also provide industry organized certification. This doesn't really come up that often. Generally, all the technology that people are going for is fine. So there's a couple of unique questions that have come up a couple of times while we've been doing this for the last 2 or 3 years. So we're just going to go through those. Do I have to own the land that the project's on? A lot of farms lease their land or lease a building, and the answer is no, you don't have to own it. So you can have a lease agreement, and that's fine. You just have to control the land for the lifetime of the equipment, or if the equipment has to go with you. So if you're doing like a refrigeration project, you would have to know what the useful life of the refrigerator is. That's something that would be, it's in like the product specs. Like there's an established number for that, which we would help you figure out. And then For solar, I think the useful life is like 20 or 25 years, so you need to prove or say that you'll have control of the land for around that time. But you don't have to own it, which is like a barrier. I think some people are like, I don't own my land, I lease this field or I lease the barn, and that's okay. What if I only have 1 meter? This basically applies to solar or anything else that's generating. This comes up a lot. People are like, oh, well, I have only 1 meter for the farm and for the residence. And since REAP doesn't cover any residential costs, you can't like use the REAP grant to put in a solar array that then gives money to your house, like, or gives power to your house. It's not allowed. But you can still only have 1 meter, so you have 2 options. You can have an audit that will do a load analysis. They'll basically say how much power is being used by the farm, how much is being used by the house. This is how big this is how big an array would need to be to power just the farm. And so they'll prorate the cost of that size of the system and how much money that is, and then that's what you use to apply for the grant. This is also something we'll help walk you through. The gist of it is you can have 1 meter, that's okay. They'll figure out the energy use. You can also put in a second meter if that's easier, if you want to split your electricity and get a separate meter for the business and for the residents. That is usually more expensive, but it can be an eligible cost in the grant. You can get 25% of that cost covered. Talked about this a little before. Can I build a new structure? The answer is no. Generally, no. Energy efficiency is not eligible with new construction projects unless the building is used for the same purpose as the existing building, and you can prove that it's more cost effective to tear it down and build a new one than to retrofit the existing building. But in general, if you have nothing there and you're going to build something, it will never be more energy efficient than having nothing there. Nothing uses no energy, so that's not going to work. If you're interested in new construction, if there's something that you need to do, there are MDAR grants, so the Massachusetts state grants that can help with that, but it's not eligible for REAP. So scoring and submitting your project, this is what everyone is really interested in. How do I get the most points? The way that REAP works is they award you points based on the different components of the application. Whoever gets the most points are like the most competitive, and then they usually get funded. So you're aiming to get the most points you possibly can. It's not a secret. These are the points breakdown. I'm going to go through this quickly, but not in great detail. A lot of it is self-explanatory. So BTU per grant dollar is basically the energy that's being saved for the money being spent. You want to maximize the amount of energy you're saving by the cost of the project. There's a formula in the application that calculates this for you, so you'll know what it is. I think it depends on which applications come in, because it's who you're competing with in that round, who looks the most competitive. But you basically want to get the most bang for your buck. Energy replaced, saved, or generated. So if a project is if you're doing a solar project and it's only like replacing 10% of your energy use, that doesn't look super great. You want to size the system appropriately so that it will replace most of your energy use. You also don't want to have it replace like a ton more, because then it sort of looks like you're trying to make money off of it because you'd be selling it back to the grid. You just want to make sure it's appropriately sized for your business. What are the environmental benefits? You can see that's not worth a ton of points, but it's essentially saying, okay, well, I'm using less electricity, I'm using less fossil fuels, it's better for the air, the water, the environment in general. Commitment of funds, I said that before, that was worth the most points. That is making sure that you can cover the remaining 75% of the cost of the project. So REAP only covers 25%. And if you can prove that you'll be able to cover the rest of it and actually successfully bring the project to completion, that's worth a lot of points. Size of the ag producer or rural small business. I'm actually not sure smaller is better, bigger is better, but not worth as many points. If you're a previous grantee or borrower, I think they prefer you to not be. It doesn't disqualify you, but if you've never had a REAP grant before, you get more points. The simple payback, which is sort of related to the cost savings or the energy savings per dollar, it's saying how long the system will take to pay for itself. So you want something that will pay for itself definitely within its useful life, and preferably as low of a payback as possible. So that's it. Energy savings, whatever that electricity or whatever the fuel is, let's say electricity is worth, will pay for the cost that you spend, like as low as possible. That might be confusing. Again, that's on the application. You put in the numbers, it kind of calculates it for you. Again, because Anne has set up the PDF to do it, she's really great. And then state director admin points is also not that many points. That's a little bit at the discretion of the USDA. There's a couple of other things that you can get points for, like being a woman or a minority-owned business. And then if there's particular projects or a particular location that the USDA wants to fund, they have a little bit of discretion to give a few more points for that. So MFAP will help you have the strongest application you can. Make sure you submit all the right supplemental documents and do the best you can to compete. Submitting the application. A lot of people are like, oh, I can just scan it and email it. Well, you can't. It needs to be submitted hard copy. You can either mail it in or you can hand deliver it. There are 4 USDA offices in Massachusetts. I don't know the addresses off the top of my head. There's one in Amherst, there's one in Hadley, there's one in West Wareham. Don't remember where the 4th one is. But I have a list of all the addresses. It's online also. We make sure that you can get to the nearest one or that you know where to mail it. It needs to be received by 4:30 on the deadline. The deadline is March 31st for this round. There's another deadline coming up. There's almost always another deadline coming up. You can also submit them using grants.gov. It's very complicated, and I don't think I've had anyone ever do that. It's also difficult to submit all the supplementary documents, like your 3 years of tax returns, digitally. Like those are submitted hard copy is much easier. So RD, which is Rural Development, which is the USDA office that handles this grant, will review your application for completeness. They'll send you an email that says, you're good to go. We got your application, and it has all the parts. And then they'll score the project. They might call you to get missing information or to ask you for more documents. That didn't happen with any of the ones that I helped last fall, so we'll shoot for that not to happen again. You can submit your application before the deadline. So if you have them ready to go today, you can submit it today, and then they would review it early and let you know like, if you're missing things, which is not a terrible idea. The earlier you get it in, the more chance you have to fix it before the deadline. After the deadline, they'll score your project according to the criteria we went over, and you know, I'm not totally sure what happens after that. The turnaround time is not very long, though. They usually let you know if you've been awarded soon. If you haven't been awarded, you get to go compete in more rounds, which is another good thing about the program. So the deadlines are March 31st and October 31st. The March deadline is for projects of all sizes. So any project of any size that's within the guidelines that we went over at the beginning is eligible to submit. The October 31st deadline is a special set-aside pot of money just for small projects. So a total cost of up to $80,000 and a maximum grant request of only $20,000. So if you have a small project, $80,000 or less, I recommend going for the fall deadline. It gives you the best chance, and it gives you the most options to compete because you get to compete in that one, and then it rolls over to the spring. And you get to compete again. After you submit, there is some required reporting if you're awarded the grant. So you have to tell USDA how your energy efficiency and renewable energy is going. I don't have a lot of details about this, but this is something that we can ask Anne for if anyone has a question, or you can talk to Anne after you have submitted, and it might be part of what they send you when they award you the grant as a requirement for reporting. But just know that that is a thing that exists. You're required to report back on how the project is doing for a couple of years. These are the contacts. I can email this out if you guys would like to have it. I think everyone has my contact info, but so that's me. This is me. I'm Megan. Liz is my coworker who could be with us today. Anne Correa, I've mentioned a bunch of times. She is our USDA REAP contact. She has put together the application and the binder PDF. She has put notes in them. She's set it up so it does some of the math for you. And she's an absolutely fantastic resource for this program. And then Jonathan Burns is her coworker, who I haven't worked with as much, but he's also very knowledgeable. And that's it. I'm going to leave this up here in case anyone wants to see it. If you have questions, I think everyone's muted, so you'll have to type them into the little questions box. I know there was some question we had for Anne, but now I've forgotten what it was. Do you guys have any questions here in person? I did remember to record it, so. Roxy, I see that you raised your hand, but I don't know what you want. There should be a way to submit questions or to say something in the chat, maybe. Or if we can't figure this out, you can always email me or call me after the webinar, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you, Anne. Anne, do you know why the DUNS is required, like why that's a thing that is needed? Sorry, she's not even typed the answer to me. I thought I unmuted her microphone, but apparently not.
Megan, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. I thought I was going to have to type that answer in.
No, just tell us.
So the DUNS number is really just a tracking number for all types of federal grants and recipients. So it's not just a USDA requirement. It's essentially you have to have your DUNS number if you're any type of organizational borrower and you're receiving any type of federal assistance. It's really just the government's way of tracking who's using assistance without needing to use your Social Security number or your federal tax ID number.
So Roxy asked if you have another business, should the farm get a separate ID? And I think the answer is yes. If you have separate businesses or if you file separate taxes, I think they should have separate numbers for tracking.
Yes, if you have two separate organizations that file separate Schedule Fs or separate Schedule Cs or any type of separate federal tax returns, you really should have two separate DUNS numbers.
There's another question, how recent of an energy audit is required? They say audits are good for about 5 years. I prefer them to be within like 2 or 3, just because fuel prices change and the prices of equipment changes. You can get an audit updated if you have one done like 6 or 7 years ago and you don't want to invest in a whole new one. It's possible to have it updated with newer information. Generally, though, 5 years is the cutoff, assuming there haven't been any major changes to the farm. So if you bought a whole new building or you've added a solar array since then, you're probably going to need a new study to cover what the major energy changes have been.
Right, Megan, and that the 5 years might be the cutoff for the MDAR grant. I think ours is, we're a little bit more conservative. I believe ours would be 3 years if it meets certain components. Otherwise, generally, we're looking at a 1-year audit. We would like to see something completed within the last 1 year, last 12 months rather, and then you can go up to 3 years, I believe, if it meets certain requirements where they've re-reviewed perhaps electricity bills or something.
Okay, good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, Rob.
They had, or you had spoken about single meter, your residence, your farm on it. Do you apply for the grant and then have someone do the study on the split, or do you have to have that study done to apply for the grant? Which is the chicken or the egg?
That should be done beforehand.
Before you apply for
before you apply for the grant, because the grant is going to prorate the amount of money you're eligible to apply for based on the cost of a system to just do the energy for the farm. So you need to know that beforehand, because that dictates how much money you can apply for. Okay. There's a question, what if you're filing 3 Schedule F? I'm not sure. Are they all under different names? Are they all different businesses? Are they all part of one business? And have you had anyone filing separate Schedule F?
Sure, Megan. We've come across tax returns that might have multiple or at least more than one Schedule F. And generally when you're filing a Schedule F, it just means that you have 2 different farming activities or farming operations that are running through one individual person's tax returns. So as long as they're both considered farming, it would be considered, you know, revenue stream as part of your ag production.
Great. Thank you. Sure. I think. Yeah, sorry.
So our farm does not generate 51% of our income.
Okay.
But our business, or my business, who leases a structure from the farm, is also a small business. So the farm is an LLC, and then we have other business, which is an S corp. Does it make sense to file for the application jointly, or does the farm qualify as a small business anyway, even though it's not 50% of the?
I mean, the farm will qualify.
Or do you just do it jointly, or do I just?
Megan, do you want me to take this one?
Yeah, I'm just going to repeat the question. I have a thing that says I can't hear. Rob is asking if he has a farm that's a small business and then another small business, one's an LLC and one's an S corp, if they should apply jointly or sort of one or the other.
Okay. Yeah, I think I can answer that, but the first two questions I might ask back is, number one, is the project located in a rural area? That would be my first question.
700 people.
Well, we would figure that out.
I'm just, yes.
Okay, so assuming it's located in a rural area, and my second question would be, who's using the majority of the electricity? The business or the farm?
The farm.
The farm uses most of the electricity. Does the business use any?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I would suggest that if you're located in a rural area, that you apply as a small business. That way you don't have to meet that 51% rule. You just have to be lower than the threshold revenue of $750,000.
Well, that doesn't answer the question. Because the farm is a small business.
That's correct. Yes, they can be considered a small business.
Enter the farm, apply as the farm as a small business.
Yes, because that uses the most electricity.
Okay.
Energy.
And then, can we use the electricity the business is using as part of the grant request? In other words, you're having a split off residential.
Yeah, and I think the two businesses are on the same meter, and you try to figure out if you have to split that, or if you only have to split it if it's residential.
No, you don't have, as long as that's a legitimate business, and we would ask information for that business as well. It's almost like you would have, you'd be filing jointly as two separate businesses, but in reality, we can only issue the grant to one federal tax ID number. So you can actually design or size a system that's going to cover the energy needs of both small businesses, as long as they're both eligible and meet those income threshold requirements. But you would have to pick which tax ID number that you want the grant to be used under. And my suggestion would be the farm, as it's the one you benefited the most.
Thank you, Ann. I had a question. I wanted to make sure I was saying the right thing on this slide. When it says the size of the ag producer, does that mean like smaller is better, or?
Yes. So the smaller the ag producer or the smaller the business, the more points are awarded.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anyone have any other questions?
Is it too late to really put together a grant for the 31st?
That depends on, he asked if it's too late to put together a grant for the 31st. That depends on how much you have done already. If you've already got a solar proposal and a DUNS number, probably not too late. If you need an audit at this point, probably is a little bit late. Otherwise, I think we could probably get something going. But, If anyone has specific questions about their situation that you want to talk about, not with a big audience, I'll be back in my office later today, and I'll be here, well, I'll be in my office for the rest of all the time. There's my contact info once again, and there's a couple people here in person that I'm happy to meet with right now. But if no one else has any other questions, I think I'm going to let you all go.
Thanks, Megan.
Thank you, Ann. All right. I will see what I can do about getting this recording either posted or distributed to you guys, and then if you know anyone else who needs this information or has any questions, send them to me, and I'll be able to send them the recording. All right. Everybody have a good day. Stay warm.